we are. I'm finally getting around to this particular video. I've been chomping at the bit to get to this video. I've watched this video. I thought this was actually a really good debate between these two, even though I think Aaron Matei deboned Cenk Uygur, and we get to see the theory of the case that Uygur presents itself. Because Uygur slides away from the Russia-Trump collusion stuff. And he goes more so and solidifies on this idea, and I'm hoping I'm articulating this right, this idea that money is being laundered in Trump's properties, and because money is being laundered in Trump properties, that the Russians, or Vladimir Putin specifically, has him over a barrel if he ever releases that information. So, he's able to control Donald Trump and issue instructions to Donald Trump in various meetings that they've had. Now, this is somewhat amazing because you go from one point that's somewhat plausible and you go to another point into like, you're building all of this on pure conjecture. Yet, he makes the case. Now, Aaron Matei does his best to kind of deal with this, but keep in mind, this is trying to prove, something that you can't prove. Uygur is just kind of pulling things off the ether to some degree. It's like, is it plausible that yes, but then you take that level of plausibility and you add another level of plausibility and another and another. At a certain point, you get to something that's far removed from the original thing that might have been plausible. It's his theory of the case. Before Uygur at the point gets to the theory of the case, though, there's sections of this that I want to talk about, and I would have a separate video dealing with Uygur's theory of the case, the Russiagate conspiracy. He's adding his own level of conspiracy on top of the Russiagate conspiracy. It's an addendum to the Russiagate conspiracy of sorts. So, Aaron Matei debates Cenk Uygur. Aaron Matei has been real strong on this thing that there's no collusion here. And what they're trying to show as collusion here is a point of view that looks at everything within the context of there's some coordination between Donald Trump and the Russians. Even though one story after the next has proved itself to be wrong, and even though in an objective reality standpoint, Donald Trump has been more hawkish than the previous administration on issues pertaining to Russia. Uygur doesn't believe that. And they get to bump heads on the issues and get more detailed to the belief versus disbelief, and they get to clarify how they feel or how they believe in this case. Aaron Matei is awesome in this. I always say when Buzzsaw or Aaron Matei is walking down the street, walk the other way. The previous debates that Aaron Matei was in, he have deboned people either on Twitter or on the Real News Network. So again, be very careful when running up on Aaron Matei. This started off as a Twitter feud back and forth. I came out and said that you need to have a debate, bring him on your show, and Uygur ends up bringing him on the show. Not because I said it. I don't think Uygur knows I exist. But in this particular case, Uygur does good. Uygur brings him on the show. Have it out. I love it. Let's hear him out. So I'm going to start this off by jumping into various points of this video. And so let's just start at the beginning. We're going to talk about Russian ads. Now, if you remember, these were ads on some of everything. Some of these were sex toys. Some of these were ads on masturbation. Others, like it was all over the place. And the ads wasn't necessarily done to elect Trump in as much as sow discord, because this company has been going on for God knows how long, and it was an internet research company, or internet troll farm of sorts. Aaron Matei is going to get this across to Uygur, making the point that, look, this thing, they've been putting out ads on all sorts of topics. It was only a small subset that ended up talking about the election. And this has been blown out of proportion to some degree, to act as if these things somehow, toppled $1 billion campaign of Hillary Clinton. It's utter nonsense. But even the company itself has been somewhat vilified. But the perspective that people have been taking on this, as if they've been moved by Vladimir Putin as opposed to incentivized just based on some level of profit that they thought they could get out of this. Let's hear them two go into this particular issue.
Producer for the Real News and Democracy Now! Aaron, welcome. How you doing, brother?
Thanks for having me.
No problem. Those are some great organizations. You're progressive, I'm progressive, but we do have a disagreement. So we're gonna have a discussion here about Russia and Trump.
I love that. I love that you have to say that. You're a progressive, I'm a progressive, and let's just have a talk like progressives. Do you really have to say that? Is that necessary that you... I don't like that. I don't like that. These words. Obama calls himself a progressive. Hillary Clinton calls himself a progressive. Like, people call themselves whatever they need to call themselves in the moment in order to deal with the audience to which they're dealing with. I suppose there's something to be said for wanting to believe that there's room on the left for people that push the Russiagate stuff. In which case, maybe you do need to articulate, I'm a lefty. I'm a lefty. Aaron Matei never has to tell anybody he's a lefty. That's all I'm saying. Let's let him go.
And I don't know if a debate's going to break out, but at least let's discuss. So we have a limited amount of time. I'm going to try to get through a lot of this as quickly as we can. And so I want to say up front, first of all, I'm not in the mainstream media, and I don't think like they do. So I'm not in the camp that Hillary Clinton would have won if it wasn't for those dastardly Russians interfering.
I know that.
Okay, that's nonsense. And I don't trust the U.S. government just because they say something.
Yeah.
But there are facts and there are things that are more provable and not less provable, and more credible and less credible within the U.S. government. Okay, yeah. So let's go through the issues one by one. So social media manipulation. So there's the Internet Research Agency in 2014. This is when it begins, and they do propaganda in America. First, let me just admit right off the bat, I don't think that this necessarily swung the election, nor is it necessarily collusion, because it doesn't show that Trump helped them. And it started in 2014. So how would they even know that Trump was going to run for president? But it does seem like they did target America for influencing our elections. To me, based on the evidence that's available, do you agree or disagree with that?
I think they. The way I see them is based on what the reporting about them said before all this election stuff happened, which is that they're basically a social media marketing firm. They're a clickbait factory that does social media posts to attract followers. They then leverage that to sell their pages to vendors, which they did. I think you can look at all their posts and based on what the research has said, that they had a preference for Trump. They wanted to promote Trump and denigrate Hillary Clinton. I have no reason to dispute that trend, but if you look at the majority of their posts, they're not about the election. They're really juvenile. I mean, like you might have seen some of the examples that they were in that Senate study recently that came out. Like there's an ad about Jesus helping people with masturbation issues and stuff like that. Yeah. So this is not the makings of a sophisticated social media influence campaign to like sow discord and elect Trump. And so I think that aspect is at minimum very overblown.
So Aaron, I largely agree with you there. So, but I do want to ask you about something where I'm not sure we have agreement. So look, but let me go further in agreeing with you. In that, like at some point there was a hyperbolic thing on mainstream media about, oh my God, they had 4 million Twitter impressions during the election.
It was Pearl Harbor, people were comparing it to
4 million Twitter impressions is like 2 tweets.
Yeah,
whatever. Yeah. Okay, it's not that interesting.
Yeah,
but it does appear to me that almost all of the Russian propaganda favors Trump, so that then becomes curious, because so for example, the US meddles in everybody's election. So we don't have clean hands, that's obvious, right?
Sure.
And normally our government picks a side.
Yes.
Right? The side that will give us the oil.
Yeah.
Or give our companies the oil, right? And it appears here the Russians picked a side. So that's what it appears to me based on all the available evidence. Do you agree or disagree with that?
Well, okay, so if we're talking about still about the social media stuff, I mean, I saw all kinds of different divisive posts. And if you look at the detailed studies, they even say, the aim was not necessarily to elect Trump, it was to sow discord. Because again, it's such a small percentage of the Russian social media posts even mentioned the candidates, even mentioned Hillary or even mentioned Trump. It looks, I mean, again, what I'm saying is I think they picked up on certain demographics. They picked up on, like they targeted African Americans with some stuff, evangelicals, gun owners. And I think they put out stuff that they thought would attract attention and maybe get them followers, basically acting like a clickbait social media firm.
Why is that wrong? Why is that wrong? Like if you're looking at a theory of the case, isn't that theory of the case just as accurate, may even be more so, than the theory that Vladimir Putin is somehow, twiddling his thumbs, working with this group in order to attack the United States, even though the group started before the election even took place? If an election was taking place and you were a clickbait farm and your goal was to try to maximize your profit, Wouldn't you go with the trends of the country at the time? Meaning, if an election is taking place, doesn't it make all the sense in the world that you would go within trends within the context of the election, because that allows you to maximize your profit? You don't need Vladimir Putin to tell you what to do in this case. As Aaron Matei kind of made the point, only a small subset had to do with the candidates. Is it possible that the people who are doing the clickbait farm may have had a preference? But how are you going from that to the Russian government? I guess I'm making the point there's a difference in those things. That everything that took place could have just as well have taken place because they were going with trends within the country itself and they wanted to maximize their profit. Just so happened that you maximize your profit in this case with clickbait, and just so happened you're trying to bait, after all, in which case you deal with trends within the country itself. Like, this doesn't have to be Vladimir Putin. People looking at it with a particular context comes to the conclusion that Vladimir Putin is pulling the strings because of apparently Vladimir Putin has controlled everything that takes place in Russia. Let's see. Let's go to the next one. Trump and Russia case. I have that at 4:20 or 4 something.
To me, people say,
All right, let's flip over.
this is evidence since the Russians stole the emails. This is the theory, right? And then gave it to WikiLeaks, and then it helped Donald Trump, that it proves collusion. And Roger Stone got advance notice from WikiLeaks. But wait, that doesn't logically make sense. If Trump colluded with the Russians, why did he need Roger Stone to find out what was happening from WikiLeaks? So I don't want people misunderstanding my position, okay?
Yeah.
So that doesn't make any sense. Now, on the other hand, when our intelligence says that it was the Russian hackers posing as or using the persona Guccifer, I don't know, 2.0, and they register the website dcleaks.com, etc. I have no reason to disbelieve that. Do you have a reason to disbelieve that?
I don't have a reason to disbelieve it in the sense that I actually haven't gone deep into this issue. I don't doubt that it very well could have been the Russians, but my position is I'm also not going to take it just because they tell me it's true. So I don't doubt it, but I also don't automatically embrace it. I think it's quite possible the Russians did steal the emails, and if so, people should be held accountable for it. But I think that we haven't seen very much evidence. Pretty much the only evidence we've actually seen is Mueller indicting Russian military intelligence officers. And he lays out in the indictment a very detailed case. And so that is something, because basically for that not to be true, Mueller would either have to be making it up or be relying on faulty evidence. But because we haven't seen that evidence itself yet, I'm just not gonna automatically believe it. But I'm certainly not, I don't spend time trying to disprove it because I think it's very plausible.
Okay, so that goes to an important.
Perfectly rational point of view. Our intelligence services are not necessarily to be trusted just because they're our intelligence services. I mean, these are guys who have knocked over governments, for God's sake. And in regards to disinformation within the population itself, yeah, they do run disinformation campaigns. And to be clear on that, COINTELPRO was a way of attacking lefties in this case, but in another case, Operation Mockingbird, this idea of trying to influence the public's consciousness on a particular issue or a particular topic. If they have evidence that the Russians did it, they should show the evidence. And his point is, I'm not going to believe it or disbelieve it until I see the evidence on it. Is it possible that Russia's hacked? Yes. Do I know that? No. Do the other people who are pushing this idea know it? No, they do not. Not to mention, you would think that if the Russians did it, that they would have information, evidence somewhere that they can just present and say, look, here's the evidence, take our word for it. Or, I'm sorry, you don't have to take our word for it, here's the evidence associated with it. It's perfectly sane. Let's go to another one. The helping Vladimir Putin theory. I think that comes up immediately after this one. Uygur has pushed this theory a few points, that part of the evidence against Donald Trump is that Donald Trump has been great to Vladimir Putin, and that there's certain things that he wouldn't do in order to get across how much he hated those Ruskies and how much he hated Vladimir Putin. again, this is, somewhat of a nonsensical thing. Oh, by the way, there's another point to this. Him getting into, like, how the case was started. Because when you listen to McCabe opened a counterintelligence case because Donald Trump was saying nice things about Russia. I mean, he was like, wow, this guy's not, he's being conciliatory towards Russia in a way that freaks me out and makes me think that something is going on here. That's based on what McCabe is saying. Somewhat of a dicey way to start an investigation in this case and looking for something that this big. And they started to look at this in a very particular way based on the political stunt that Hillary Clinton pulled, the screaming at Trump and Russia had something to do with her losing the election. A media class that perfectly went in line with that particular argument and ran with it. And people started looking at it through that lens. Started looking through that lens. Let's keep going. Let's go to the next one. Helping Vladimir Putin. This theory that Donald Trump has been somehow helping Vladimir Putin. I think this theory is nonsense. I think an honest, objective look. Trump has been more hawkish than the previous administration. If Donald Trump is helping Putin, so was Obama. I mean, this argument is again, look through the context of a lens that believes that Trump is somehow associated with the Russians. Let's see if this.
I really believe everything that Mueller is going to put in his report. On the other hand, I think that it is far more plausible than the counter theory that Trump puts out there that it's a witch hunt and that the FBI all got together to target him. So I'm curious what your take on that is.
Well, I wouldn't use the term witch hunt, but I think based on everything we've seen so far, I think you can make a case that whoever launched this investigation and whoever continued it did act in an overzealous way that wasn't politically motivated. I mean, like Andrew McCabe recently in his book tour, he has made no allusion to there being any evidence of a conspiracy between Trump and Russia. Literally, he confirmed, and the New York Times has reported this, in terms of the decision behind opening up a counterintelligence investigation of Trump, which is pretty extraordinary. That the predicate, that the inciting incident for the FBI was the fact that Trump was saying nice things about Putin. He wasn't criticizing Russia, which says to me that there was a sort of a Cold War paranoia left over in the Bureau. And rather than considering the possibility that Trump was just carrying out the policies he was elected on, he did campaign on better relations with Russia, that they saw that as suspect enough to open up a counterintelligence investigation. And they weren't alone. Even during the campaign, the entire national security establishment kind of freaked out because he was calling for not just better ties with Russia, but Trump was also talking about scaling back foreign wars. And he
Think about how the media reacted, the political class reacted. Even people like Tom Hartman, when Donald Trump said we're going to pull out of Syria and Afghanistan, they flipped out. Here you have somebody who's being conciliatory towards Russia. And it's not, their argument would be, to put a decent light on it, would be like, look, these are human beings who are in these offices. And as human beings in these offices, they have a certain focal point of the world, a viewpoint of the world. And some of these people were still living in a somewhat of a Cold War mentality. And living in this Cold War mentality, they see what Donald Trump is doing, and they are looking at this with a certain degree of suspicion, and they open an intelligence case on him. And it's like, but that's all you got. Like, you've opened up a counterintelligence case on the guy. Because of how the guy was acting and what the guy was saying, despite the fact that that's how the guy got elected to some degree. It's, again, I don't think his point is necessarily wrong. And by the way, this point doesn't mean a conspiracy per se. Like, it's not under this model, a bunch of people in the FBI got together in order to screw over Donald Trump. It's more so people who were in a position to make a decision on the case, has a certain perspective of the world, and looked at Donald Trump in a particular way when Donald Trump was doing what Donald Trump was doing. Then he fulfilling his campaign pledge of being more conciliatory towards Russia and scaling back the foreign wars. People have perspectives. Let's keep going.
Sort of won over a segment of the population that was against foreign wars. The segment.
even before we knew any of the rest of this, made all of us raise our eyebrows at the time. And we're on the record in Russia, and seem to, here's another point that even before we knew any of, so we don't agree on that. And so I think that when Trump went around saying, attacking our NATO allies, which certainly helps Putin and Russia.
This is kind of what my point. He's making my point. Everything is put in the context of helping Vladimir Putin. But again, that looks at it through this lens that Trump is somehow working in collusion with Russia, even though the things that he's talking about are not as cut and dry as he's making them seem with the stuff. Let's keep going. I want to get into helping Vladimir Putin theory, because that's the one I particularly like to poke holes into. Let's go.
Seem to, here's another point that even before we knew any of the rest of this, made all of us raise our eyebrows at the time. And we're on the record and it's in the videos. Why did they change the GOP platform?
There we go. Let me address that, because that's a huge thing. And that's a story I think that's been blown incredibly out of proportion. Now, one indication I think of how wrong people have gotten on this is that look at Trump's actual policy once he got to office. Trump did something that Obama would not do. He sold weapons to Ukraine, which Obama resisted doing. Everybody wanted him to do it, but Obama said, you know what, I don't want to further inflame this already dangerous proxy war, because right now the US is engaged in a proxy conflict on Russia's borders in Ukraine. Trump came to office and I personally don't think Trump wanted to, based on his public statements and wanting better relations with Russia, but Trump sold those weapons. That was his decision. And so in office, he takes a much more hawkish position than Barack Obama did.
But only on that issue. Well, okay, so I agree with that issue, but on.
It's not only on that issue. This is kind of what I mean. It's not only on that issue. If you're looking at it through that very specific lens of Trump has something to do with Russia, etc., the Uygur brings up a point of the GOP platform. What about the changing of the GOP platform? Aramate steps into it and says, Trump went as far as selling weapons to the Ukraine. These guys were actual Nazis, and these guys were out there killing Russians. Obama wouldn't do it. I remember distinctly Obama wouldn't do this, but Trump did. You brought up an issue, he kills the issue, and you say only on that issue. You brought the issue up. This wasn't him breaking it up. You're like, only on that issue, and the fact of the matter is, it's not only on that issue. The getting rid of the INF treaties, the space race that they're involved in. Right now, this idea of putting weapons in space, the Venezuela conflict is one issue after the next, where the Trump has gone further than Obama. The bombings in Syria, they're going to talk about this stuff. I want them to talk about it, because I want. Aramate pokes holes in this by kind of making this point that none of these things were in the interest of Vladimir Putin. All of these things are something that Trump did, many of which Obama would have never done. So explain to me, how on earth, in objective reality, are you making the case that Trump is somehow an animatronic robot of Vladimir Putin if Vladimir Putin isn't getting anything out of the fact that Trump is an animatronic robot of Vladimir Putin? This conspiracy theory doesn't hold water. But let's let him go on.
On other issues, he talks to Putin, and 2 weeks later we're withdrawing out of Syria. Now I love that we're withdrawing from Syria, but that's one of 1,000 convenient things. Okay, then we get to the issue of the NATO allies constantly saying, not only, hey, do you have to pay your bills, but we might not protect you, which is exactly what Putin would want. And then
everything is exactly what Putin wants. He also got his NATO allies to pay more money for NATO. Now, this looks good for his base. That's the first point. So this can be a matter of just internal politics, going out to this kind of foreign governments level. But let's not miss that point. He gets NATO allies to spend more money of their governments itself. He also got Germany to kill the pipeline deal that Germany wanted, and Russia wanted. It was a pipeline deal between Germany and Russia. Donald Trump derided this deal over and over and over again, and eventually got Merkel to kill the deal. I guess my point is this. Even though he may browbeat the NATO allies, Donald Trump's tone is a little bit more belligerent than many of the other presidents, a lot more belligerent. And in using political rhetoric in order to achieve a particular end, the particular end was I want them to pay more money. Why do I want them to pay more money? Because the United States is the world's weapons contractor, number one weapons contractor. Meaning, if they're spending more money, they're most likely spending their money on us and our industries. This argument doesn't fly. Yes, he browbeat the NATO allies. To what effect? Well, he got the NATO allies to spend more money on their military. I don't think this argument has the gun in it or the smoke in it that I think Uygur believes it does.
It appeared that they changed the platform. I know you were getting to that, so let me let you get to that and give you more.
Okay.
Because then the private meetings with Putin are preposterous. So all right, but I'll let you get to all that.
So there we definitely disagree on a whole host of items. The platform. What happened was they didn't change the platform. You had one delegate from Texas, and this is why. See, it's been tough because I think our media has gone a certain direction on this, and it takes to sift through. It takes forever, and it's kind of boring. But the facts are there. The platform was not changed. What happened was there was an amendment proposed by a Republican delegate from Texas who wanted to talk about sending lethal arms to Ukraine. Some Trump people got involved and they consulted, I think, with the campaign, and they decided that they didn't want to go that far. So what they did is they rejected an amendment calling for lethal arms for Ukraine, but they still kept in a language calling for appropriate assistance to defend Ukraine or something like that, which if you compare the final Republican platform to the Democratic platform, the Republican platform is far more hawkish on that issue. So this platform thing is an example of a story that has been blown way out of proportion, not based on any, I think, actual facts, but because it serves a propaganda purpose.
Yeah.
It serves a narrative, and so does everything else about Trump and Putin. The fact is, when it comes to selling weapons to Ukraine, ripping up the INF treaty, bombing Syria twice, which Obama never bombed the Putin's ally in Syria. Trump has twice.
But you know that he gave them warning ahead of time, and which I don't disagree with because I don't.
This is the Nerf bomb theory. I deride Cenk Uygur ferociously on this, because it's a Nerf bomb theory. I mean, it's you only have this perspective if you're living in a country that doesn't get bombed. Just saying. If you put your perspective in the context of a country that is getting bombed, it's like if somebody slaps you, how are you going to take that slap? No, it didn't kill you. No, it didn't injure you. You have no broken bones at all. But do you let the person walk away? Do you feel some kind of way about it, even if you don't, if the person does walk away, because you don't necessarily want to get violent? I guess I'm making the point that countries are not all that different in this case. They have a country identity or identity of self. And they don't want to feel demoralized any more than any particular individual wants to feel demoralized. You know what demoralizes a country? Having itself being attacked and not being able to do anything about it. Whether or not the attack hit anything or not, the fact is you've invaded another country's airspace, and in invading that country's airspace, that is an intrusion. You aren't welcome there. You're invading it. And not just invading it, you're dropping bombs on it. You had a specific intention of causing harm and destruction, regardless of whether you caused that harm and destruction. I'm saying the very act itself is an intrusion. And it is something that the country itself does not take as lightly as Cenk Uygur making this argument of Nerf bombs, and that it was scripted bombing and it was a friendly bombing and all this other stuff. There are no friendly bombings. I guarantee to you that the United States is not an ally of Syria, in which case there are no friendly bombings. Just because Syria didn't have the capacity to respond doesn't necessarily mean that it went over as if it was just buddies dropping bombs and munitions on one another. Just saying, I hate this theory, this Nerf bomb theory. Let's let him keep going.
I don't want to start a war,
but you think
and they bombed pretty useless part of the airport. Again, I don't mind it because I don't want a war, but if there's a friendly bombing that exists, that was it.
We'll disagree on that. We'll disagree on that.
Yeah, that's okay. And on the sanctions, it passes 98-2. Trump says, I don't want to do the sanctions. And he says, now look, don't get me wrong. I love the idea of doing sanctions on Iran, right?
Yes, he does.
And North Korea at the time, right?
Yeah.
But he says, but on Russia, I don't want to do the sanctions. And then he delays it for a long time, even after he was supposed to put them into. Why delay the sanctions?
Well, first of all, I think I can imagine a whole bunch of reasons. First of all, he campaigned on better relations with Russia. this is hurting his ability to do that. And just because he doesn't want to be.
Do you think he really cares that much about policy and his promises on the campaign?
So yes and no, but I still think Uygur is wrong. Again, this is specific to the context of there's something wrong here, and so anything that I find goes within the context of that being something wrong. Why wouldn't the president want to pass sanctions on Russia? Why? Why would Donald Trump feel some kind of way about putting sanctions on Russia? The campaign, the policy, or the media, the Democratic Party, Hillary Clinton, has been screaming to high heaven, screaming bloody murder, hysterically running through the streets, ripping their hair out, that Donald Trump colluded with Russia in some way. And this was an act of war, that this was to some degree like Pearl Harbor or like 9/11, but done in a cyber way, but toppled democracy itself. Ironic, since the information that's revealed in those revealed that Hillary Clinton was toppling democracy itself as they cheated Bernie Sanders. Just saying, yes, I'm still bitter. But right, why would a president not do that? Why would a person, why would a person not go and put sanctions on the Russian government in this case? Uygur believes that it's because they got something on him. Is it possible that Donald Trump doesn't want to pass sanctions not because Donald Trump cares about any kind of campaign promise to be associated with Russia, but because of what it means? What does it mean? What does it mean for Donald Trump to pass sanctions on Russia? It means that it's an approval, or it's an acknowledgement that Russia had something to do with hacking the elections. And in an acknowledgement that Russia has something to do with hacking the elections, it would also be tantamount to saying that I didn't get here by my own steam. I got here because a foreign government intruded into the electoral process in order to keep Hillary Clinton out. Donald Trump does not want to own up to any level of belief or idea that Russia had anything to do with him getting elected. From his vantage point, if there is no Russia-Trump collusion, then this is a witch hunt. Understand, from his vantage point, if it was you, when somebody was accusing you of something that you didn't do, and use that to pivot to other stuff that you might have done, well, yeah, you may say that the insipid thing or the inciting thing is a witch hunt, because from your perspective, it would be a witch hunt. But in this very specific case, this makes all the sense in the world of why you wouldn't want to do something like that. It would be like trying to get Obama to say that he's a Kenyan citizen. I mean, Donald Trump's ego does not allow him the political indignity of saying that he got to the presidency because of cheating that took place in the election. Yes, I can think of reasons why Donald Trump wouldn't want to instigate those sanctions. Let's see, Nerf bombs, he did his Nerf bombs. Sanctions, he did sanctions. Manafort, so Manafort is on 14, let's see. All right, let's go to Paul Manafort. They keep calling Paul Manafort a Russian operative of sorts, or some kind of Russian plan, or they was engaging in some kind of pro-Russia affairs. But fact of the matter is that newspapers, if I'm not mistaken, the New York Times or one of the articles, it was either the Times or Washington Post, went into this thing that Manafort was trying to get a pro-EU, pro-US agenda for the Ukraine. That's what they said themselves. Like, so this is not something that's unknown or in some kind of fringe paper. It said itself that Manafort was trying to move the Ukraine into a pro-Western position. That's something different than him being a Kremlin operative or working for the Kremlin. Let's hear Aaron Matei go into this.
Well, Manafort had other dealings with the Ukrainian oligarchs, and I believe some things that usually touch the oligarchs, like the sanctions. So I don't know if he knows who's making money and not making money in Venezuela, but he knows the sanctions are hurting the oligarchs, and the oligarchs are all connected to Putin. So to me, and this is a huge misunderstanding, part of why I wanted to have this conversation. I can go on and on about the election, but I actually think that the collusion in the election is a very hard case to make. I mean, look, you go to Manafort. Well, Manafort had other dealings with the Ukraine.
I agree, because you sure didn't make it here. I mean, we're about to go into Uygur's theory of the case. I mean, because ultimately Uygur's going to make his theory of the case. But I would say up to this point, you have not made your case. You have not moved me one iota, and I would imagine you didn't move, what's his name? I'm giving you my perspective of this while these guys go out and have their debate on the issue. Aaron Matei's knowledge of this stuff is in depth. So some of this stuff I can't comment on. Aaron Matei is much better to comment on. But in other cases, I've followed this since the beginning of this, meaning going all the way back to the election. And my perspective of this is straightforward. I look at this as, what if there was no collusion? They haven't been able to demonstrate it. And if they haven't been able to demonstrate it, maybe it doesn't exist. And if it doesn't exist, each of these items that they're bringing up, what is the actual reality to it if you're not looking at it through the lens that there's something to do with Trump and Russia? And Aaron Matei kills a lot of this stuff as it goes on. Uygur making his theory of the case, this gets in a little bit more into what he's more solid on, where he's like, this is what I believe has taken place. This is what I believe has taken place. Let me see where he is with this. I don't know if I'm going to cut this video or just do it now. Let's see where he is here.
Ukrainian oligarchs, and I believe usually touch the oligarchs, like the sanctions.
So Manafort. So let's go with Manafort and listen to him on this one.
So I don't know if he knows who's making money and not making money in Venezuela, but he knows the sanctions are hurting the oligarchs, and the oligarchs are all connected to Putin. So to me, and this is a huge misunderstanding, and part of why I wanted to have this conversation, I can go on and on about the election, but I actually think that the collusion in the election is a very hard case to make. I mean, look, you go to Manafort. Well, Manafort had other dealings with the Ukrainian oligarchs, and I believe some oligarchs connect to Russia. We can disagree about that, but overall, that might be, I mean, I would argue, why did he pick Manafort out of all those different people? He picks another pro-Russian guy, but overall, most of Manafort's crimes are not related to Trump. Okay,
none of them are related to Trump, pretty much. And also, Manafort was not even pro-Russian. Like, we could have a whole discussion about that.
Love that. He said, well, most of them aren't related. It's like, no, none of them are. Saying that most of them aren't gives this impression that there is at least one that is. That would be misinformation. None are. Zero, zero, zero. Good job on Aaron Matei for batting that down.
But actually, Manafort was working in Ukraine for Yanukovych. And if you look at what Manafort was doing, he was trying to lobby the US and the EU to accept Ukraine, which is the exact opposite of what Russia wanted. And that's what he was paid to do.
So his connections to the Russian oligarchs, I think, are clear, but that's okay. We disagree on that. But again, it's not the main event, right? Because I think that the Democratic establishment and a lot of people in the media, Rachel Maddow, have overhyped the collusion in the election, okay?
Yeah.
But what I'm concerned about is Donald Trump's deep ties to the Russians throughout his business career, which I'm worried has affected what he has done in office. So for example, the Russians, they do the Trump Tower meeting, so Don Jr., Manafort, Kushner go there, but the Russians don't give them any information. Now, Donald Trump Jr., upon hearing the email that the Russians are going to give them information, goes, I love it.
Yeah.
Incredibly stupid thing to say. That would have been collusion, but the Russians didn't give them the information. I think that gets them more compromising information on Trump.
But let me say, Jack, I don't think it would have been collusion because again, the email was written by who? A music publicist.
But saying, I will connect you with Russian officials, and he goes, and they will give you information on Hillary Clinton.
They have compromised.
That would be a crime. There is no such crime as collusion, but there is a crime of conspiracy. There's a crime of taking money from a foreign government while running a campaign, and that certainly would have violated both of those if they had gotten the information.
If that's the case, then the Clinton campaign is guilty for taking dirty information from Ukraine or from the Steele dossier, right? Like the Clinton campaign paid for the Steele dossier. That got foreign dirt allegedly on Trump, including.
No, but they didn't donate it, Aaron. So I hear, look, the Clintons have an enormous number of problems, and they're intertwined with a lot of governments. And if you're going to question,
this is somewhat of a back and forth on, I guess you can say, the definition of collusion in this case, or whether or not it would have been collusion. I'm glad he mentioned that, and he brings that up. I often look at this case, and I'm like, how are they attacking Donald Trump on this when Hillary Clinton got her information from a foreign source? Uygur somewhat clears that up, saying, well, look, you can buy your information from a foreign source. That's okay. But it can't be donated. God, man, that seems like an absurd distinction, but I guess from a legal standpoint, it is what it is. Let's keep going, though. So, I might as well do this. All right, so let's go with... No, I'm going to do another video. And in that second video, I'm going to do Uygur's theory of the case. Let me see. There are people here.
Question.
And so let's deal with the people here before going into it. Oh, wow. There are a lot of people here. Okay. All right. Well, I might as well do an entire video then, since there's so many people here. Efren Rojas. Thank you, Efren Rojas. Thank you for supporting the show. Let me see. Make sure I don't see anybody else before we go to the second part. And I may just cut it. All right. So let's do the second part. 280, good deal. Yeah, there's a lot of people here. I'm shocked by this. Cenk makes the pathetic attempts to distance himself from Maddow mainstream media. Oh, you noticed that. So you saw that. He was throwing shade at Maddow. He was like, Rachel Maddow. He's like, Rachel Maddow. Maybe TYT can just rerun the 2016 show instead of bothering shooting. Oh, Bob. Bob. You're wrong, Bob. That's wrong. Buy it from a foreign spy. Yeah, you can buy it from a foreign spy. That's amazing. One time on a hot mic, I heard Cenk say, "What did Rachel Maddow cover today?" When the break was over, they did the same story Maddow reported on. No joke. That's hilarious. That's hilarious. Luca, Bob Ramirez, TYT election night 2016 must-see viewing. It is must-see viewing, Luca. Just wait till Taz Menagit arrives. Alright, I don't know what that one is. Got his ass handed by Buzzsaw. Yeah, I agree with you on this one. I don't think Cenk held up to this one. I don't think he held up to this one. I'm not reading that. Don't feed the trolls. Alright, so I thought it was Samuel Jackson in Pulp Fiction. Oh god, that's funny. Alright, R. Cochran, the number's up because you're doing good work. Aw, thank you. I appreciate it. So let's go to the second part. This is where Cenk is going to give his theory of the case. This is what he thinks. Like, this is, like, the other stuff was the appetizer. That was, you know, I'm just throwing stuff at him to see what happens. I'm throwing, what do they call it? When you send people, sending them off cannon fodder. Yeah, cannon fodder. Where he's like, all right, I'm putting up my other ideas that people have thrown out, and these kind of ideas that I think are suspicious, and I'm going to let you see what you can do with them. Maybe I can get you on that. Maybe I can get you with a bullshit opening. And Hermitage knocks him down, one after the next, after the next, after the next. And I myself think I knocked some of these down myself with my own perspective of how these things turn out. But nevertheless, he's convinced no one. That's all I'm saying. At the end of this, he's convinced no one. So now he gets to his theory of the case, the meat of the case. His meat of the case is, like I said earlier, ultimately that they've laundered money. Russians have laundered money in Trump's properties. And because of the money laundering, they have Trump. Meaning Trump never thought he was going to win, but he got elected, in which case now they have their hooks in him because they can release this information that's damaging to Trump. So they got blackmailed. They're blackmailing the president of the United States. And when Donald Trump is going and having these meetings, when he's having these one-on-one private meetings, that Vladimir Putin is issuing instructions to Trump. Now, you think I'm joking when I say that because that sounds fucking amazing. But Cenk Uygur makes the argument that he believes 100% that Vladimir Putin is instructing the Manchurian president, Donald Trump, and giving him instructions on what to do when he goes back to the United States. And that's the only reason that Donald Trump wouldn't necessarily want anybody around when he's having conversations with Putin on this. Now, Hermitage kind of makes a point to him that Gorbachev and Reagan had private conversations themselves. This is not necessarily something that has never taken place before. And also kind of make the point that if, from your perspective, if it was you, and all of this talk about Russia and Trump has been hyped up, and they've been attacking you on this, and you know that there's no collusion between you two, but, like I said, you may have some business dealings that may not necessarily go over all that well. You may have other connections, but no Trump and Russia collusion. Would you be a little hesitant to have somebody around that may leak information that come out? Maybe. I mean, it's hard to know what's going on in the psychology of an individual that's under an assault of this kind of Russia-Trump collusion stuff, and that has been going on for the entirety of this presidency. It's hard to know. Am I going to jump to the conclusion immediately that Vladimir Putin is whispering instructions in the Trump ear for him to go back and enact in the United States? If he is, he's doing a horrible job. If he is, he's doing an absolutely horrible job. All of this instruction stuff, to some degree, will have to show works. Like, what is the point of instructions if they don't do anything? If you're given instructions, you would expect the person to do something. I mean, like I said, he's been more hawkish than Obama on this. So was Vladimir Putin whispering instructions to Obama on this? I mean, come on. But nevertheless, the theory continues. So let's hear Uygur present his theory of the case.
On that, I'm largely going to agree. But they paid for the Steele dossier as opposed to it being donated to them. That's why it's not a.
So that's legal?
No, it is, because it's not a. $100 million in several Trump properties in Florida alone, according to Reuters. So if you say to me, random Russian dudes are going and they have 11% of Trump properties in Florida, maybe they like Sunny Isles, right? That's not a big deal. If you tell me 63 Russian billionaires have invested in any property, I'm gonna look into money laundering, okay? There aren't any oligarchs at this point not connected to Putin, and there aren't randomly investing in properties in America. The Chinese do it, the Russians do it, the Saudis do it. It's money laundering.
I don't have the factual basis to dispute how out of the ordinary it is that these Russian billionaires, as you say, have money in Trump properties. I haven't actually looked into that. I know that U.S. imposed shock therapies helped create this class of Russian oligarchs. A lot of whom are then parking their money overseas, by the way, which Putin has been trying to fight because Putin wants their money at home. If you say that there is an unusual amount invested in Trump properties, then yeah, I guess you can make a case there for potential money laundering.
This is one of those kind of unknown things. I mean, Uygur is going in a particular direction with this and asking a question. Is it possible that Russian oligarchs or Russian billionaires money laundered Trump properties, meaning dumping a bunch of money into Donald Trump properties to clean it for the United States? Maybe. Who knows? Maybe. I mean, is it possible? Yeah, of course, it's possible. So, fair enough. Let's let him keep going because he's going to build upon this possibility. But Aaron Matei kind of also makes the point that, look, if that's true, that is against Vladimir Putin's interests because Vladimir Putin has been trying to claw the money back into Russia. So if what you're saying is true and there's money laundering done by a bunch of Russian billionaires, then that is against Vladimir Putin's interests also. I mean, come on, that's a solid defense in this case. If Vladimir Putin is against this, then how is this thing taking place if Vladimir Putin controls everything that takes place in Russia? Particularly if he's controlling Donald Trump. It's a decent defense, even though I suspect that Aaron Matei was somewhat surprised by this particular line of attack.
Wondering. I just don't know, but I wouldn't be surprised if many people around the world launder the money through Trump properties. And I'm not particularly more alarmed by them being from Russia than I would be if they were from any other country.
Yeah, well, it depends on if they're getting something in return. For example, there's a pretty good theory that Wilbur Ross helped that money laundering in the Bank of Cyprus. And did he get anything in return? Yeah, he got to be Commerce Secretary in return. So
you think that's why, like Wilbur?
Let's call that a hypothesis. He starts off, there's a pretty good theory. It's a hypothesis. It's a guess. You think something is taking place, but you ran with it. We just need to be clear on the difference between a guess versus reality. Let's keep going.
Ross is the Commerce Secretary because he helped Trump. He helped Trump launder money.
Yes, I 100% believe that. Okay, I mean, out of all the people to pick randomly, it's like, oh, look at that guy that has all my money that he keeps safe where it came from and where it went in the Bank of Cyprus.
I don't know that theory. All I know is that Trump appointed a lot of scumbag billionaires to his cabinet.
Okay, that's also.
All right, hypothesis. No way to validate it one way or the other. We'll move on. That can't carry any value because, again, there's no way to evaluate it one way or the other. Cenk, 100% believing something is not the same thing as those things being actually legitimately real. Let's keep going.
So fair. Yeah. So now let me go to some of the Trump kids. And American banks, we have all the funding we need.
Over Trump, I think, is a stretch. I mean, I think it's quite plausible that the Trump organization is corrupt. I mean, I think that's pretty much established. And so, yeah, conspiracy or leverage over Trump or Putin.
And they're really invested in our programs. We just go there all the time. Now, do you really think that the Russians love golf, or perhaps there's another reason why they're giving so much money into Trump properties?
Well, it very well could be then that they need a place to park their money and their lawn.
Now, I'm going through these because each of these are essentially building on a specific argument. I mean, Uygur used to be a lawyer, so he's framing this almost in the context of a legal thing, making a case. And so it's Trump properties is getting a lot of money from Russians. That's what it basically boils down to. Uygur's argument is money is being laundered by the Russians in Trump properties. So I'm going to advance this because I don't want to get dinged for duplicating videos.
And disproportionately Russian money laundering. I mean, is trying to get a lot of this money back to his own country. He doesn't want Russian money. How then you get to that leading to any kind of political decision or Trump doing something for Putin?
There's another reason why they're giving so much money into Trump properties.
Well, it very well could be then that they need a place to park their money and they're laundering money there. How that leads to anything illicit, like in terms of a political conspiracy or leverage over Trump or Putin, Putin having leverage over Trump, I think is a stretch. I mean, I think it's quite plausible that the Trump organization is corrupt. I mean, I think it's pretty much established. And so, yeah, if they're being used as a home for money laundering and disproportionately Russian money laundering, I mean, I think that's quite plausible. But then how then you get to that leading to any kind of political decision or Trump doing something for Putin, especially, by the way, Putin is trying to get a lot of this money back to his own country. He doesn't want Russian money parked overseas. And by the way, also on these properties, what the Trump boys didn't say is that so many of these Trump properties are just basically brands. He sells his name. He doesn't actually own the property. So I don't know even how big of a cut the Trump organization itself is getting from properties like this.
So in the Trump Tower Moscow deal, which we don't have time to get into, he might have gotten a licensing fee, which is just handing you money, right? But for the golf properties, they largely own them. Okay. So that's a different situation. But look, we gotta, before we run out of time, get to the meetings, because so you're saying it's in a lot of trouble, and if he was anybody but the president, clearly arrested. Okay, so and there ain't no oligarchs in Russia. They go, Putin, I'm not going to cooperate with you. Okay, there used to be. They're all in prison. Okay, so and so then Trump goes and meets with Putin 9 times. In the beginning, it's a little abnormal because he's inviting the Russians and bragging about how he fired Comey down in the Russian investigation. But by the end, it becomes preposterous. So no other American officials allowed. And then he bans his own translator. Okay, now how is that not a giant red flag? I am talking about something secret that I don't want any other American to know.
To me, it's quite plausible. First of all, Reagan and Gorbachev did pretty much the exact same thing. They had meetings, and those meetings were fruitful. They helped lead to a huge reduction in nuclear weapons. And the fact is that there is a class of politicians in both countries, I'd say especially in the US, that want to undermine warmer US-Russia ties. Not because they care about spreading freedom or they're concerned about Putin's human rights record, but because tensions with Russia are profitable. And I do think that they're profitable for the weapons industry, basically, and for media organizations like MSNBC that are constantly going on about this. But Trump might have had a reason to be fed up with leaks and didn't want to risk any more leaks as he's trying to do diplomacy. I don't think just because he doesn't want other people there. And by the way, Tillerson was there for one of their main meetings.
One of the original meetings, but Tillerson was also the CEO of ExxonMobil that had a $500 billion deal with the Russians that was blocked by the sanctions.
That is true.
Okay, and so what do I find more plausible? That Trump cares so deeply about his policy goals with Russia that he doesn't want him undermined by an American translator? Or that he really doesn't want anyone to find out what Putin's telling him about all the money laundering that he's done all this time, and could he be getting directions back? And now you say, well, wow, getting directions back, that sounds amazing.
I'm glad you think so. I'm glad, I love that. He's like, getting directions back, and I bet you're probably going to say, whoa, that sounds amazing. Yeah, because it sounds amazing. This is a Manchurian candidate stuff. Like, that the Russian, Vladimir Putin, the Russian president, is leaning into Trump's ear and is saying, when you get back to your country, I need you to do this, 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 and this. Hail Hydra. Go about your business. I mean, that is some insane stuff. Is it possible? Well, I wasn't in those meetings, so it's hard to tell whether or not it's true or not. But that is an explosive statement that needs to have a little bit more than Cenk Uygur is figuring. I'm figuring that this took place. You can figure anything you want. That's an amazing charge, and that's something that you need some level of evidence for. You're essentially saying the President of the United States is being given directions and instructions from Vladimir Putin in a country that at this point we're considered to be an enemy. I'm just saying, going from something like money laundering, which, okay, there's plausibility in the money laundering thing, from money laundering to instructions from Vladimir Putin is an amazing, amazing jump. Like, that is an amazing jump. Even if I can give you legitimacy in the first premise, by the time you're getting and build up to the final premise becomes utterly detached from the other part, because there's so much leeway, or there's such a gap in your actual knowledge that you're filling that gap in with your own perspective of events, your own figuring. Well, let's be very clear: the difference between actual reality that we know of versus people's figuring. I'm figuring that took place. You may say, whoa, that's amazing. That's an amazing charge. Because it is an amazing charge. I'm glad you yourself recognize it as you say it. Let's keep going.
Not with Trump. Trump's whole business model is corruption.
So you're saying in these meetings, Trump via a translator, so obviously via Putin's translator. Yeah. Because I believe this happened, didn't this just happen once, that basically he was with Melania, and they walked up and there was and the Russian translator translated for Trump?
So no, it happened 3 different times. One time he did have the translator. He wouldn't allow any other officials, but he did have the American translator. Yeah. And afterwards, he took his notes and said, "You're not allowed to have those notes."
Reportedly, reportedly,
But Aaron, okay, that's okay. That's okay. So and then another time, there's no translator at all, and I believe.
I love the way people have their various debating styles. Like when Joe Rogan allows a person to just talk. When Alex Jones was on the show, Alex Jones was saying all sorts of shit that was off the wall. Aliens are controlling it from a third dimension or from another dimension and all this other stuff. And Joe Rogan would just be like, tell me more, explain, tell me more. In cases where he disagrees with the person, again, he tends to say simplistic questions of, okay, explain, why do you think that way? And sometimes people get enough rope where they jump off of a cliff with their neck in the noose. Aaron Matei is different though. Like, if you're debating him, you're debating him. And if we're going to talk very specifically. And so if you're going to say, took his notes, well, we need to be clear that that's not actual reality. We don't necessarily know if that took place in the way that it took place. So, yeah, reportedly. And which Cenk fully understands that this was, okay, fair enough. He's like, all right, fair enough. You're being a hard ass on this. But this is not just this debate. And there's other debates for the Real News Network. It's the same thing. It's fighting over even the basic of details within the argument itself, while simultaneously being honest enough to give way on things that he needs to give way on things. It clearly works in regards to the argument here. In this case, though, I don't think he's heard of this particular argument, in which case it's like you're building up a defense against something that you're not necessarily aware of what's coming. The Vladimir Putin telling Trump what to do thing is a bit extreme. I'm sorry, that is a bit extreme. I don't think I've even heard Rachel Maddow say that Vladimir Putin is giving Donald Trump instructions. That is extreme. And Aramate is sitting here like, wow, I've never heard this one before. But let's let him finish, because it's like, how do you attack this? Nobody was in the room, so there's no way to know. You're essentially saying, this is what I think took place, and then there's no way to disprove that particular thing. It's like, how do you disprove the negative? But shouldn't there be a little bit more gusto behind that, a little bit more evidence, a little bit more fact-based approach to something like this, as opposed to just kind of, this is what I think is taking place. And what I think is taking place is that Vladimir Putin is giving Donald Trump instructions. I just think that's extreme.
I believe a third time he's with Melania, and he still does not allow a translator.
Okay, so what I can say is, again, there's a precedent for this. This is how diplomacy is done. And again,
by the way, Trump does not do diplomacy like that. Forget Gorbachev and Reagan. He doesn't do it with any other country.
I don't know. Listen, so you're saying there's no other country where he's not met
where
with
he bans an American officials or an American translator.
Well, there's also no other country where he's being accused of being an agent of that government, and where that government's being blamed for giving him the election.
But Aaron, if you were accused of being an agent of pick a country, right, Botswana, and you said, I don't want any American translators when I talk to the people, the leaders of Botswana, wouldn't that attract more attention?
But you're assuming that the only factor in this is whether or not Donald Trump is trying to attract attention. There may be other factors. People who are in situations have other forces acting on them than just one primary force. Oftentimes there's multiple things. It's just as possible that Donald Trump doesn't want, from the standpoint of leaks and from the standpoint of being vilified on this Russia front, it's very possible that he doesn't want anybody in there listening to the conversation, not because anything untoward is being said or Vladimir Putin is giving him instructions, but because he wants to be able to have a conversation in an open way without having to watch each and every word that he says, because he's scared that some leak is going to take place and something is going to be mischaracterized. I remember there was an open mic between Obama and I think it was Putin, I could be wrong, and Obama said, I'll have more leeway after the election, and Republicans started screaming at high heaven, oh my God, Obama is talking off mic. It's like this utter nonsense. What he said was absolutely true. If I win the election, I have more leeway because I don't have another election. We can talk in a more honest fashion. That's not necessarily, again, indicative that Vladimir Putin is giving him instructions. There could be other reasons why Donald Trump has decided he doesn't want people in the room when they're having a conversation. I'm just saying it's somewhat of a leap in this front. And to say that he doesn't do that with any other country, yeah, Aramate is right. There is no other country where he's vilified in this way as if he's some kind of Manchurian candidate. For fuck's sake. Cenk Uygur just said a few minutes ago that Vladimir Putin was giving Donald Trump instructions. So, I think that's the end of this. With Aramate eventually saying, look, I can't disprove that because I wasn't in the room. By the same token, neither were you. So, Aramate did a good job in this debate. And again, man, Buzzsaw.
Okay, let me ask you a question.
The first part of this debate, I think he completely deboned Cenk Uygur. The second part of this debate, where Cenk Uygur kind of puts forth his own theory of the case, his own hypothesis of the case, the conspiracy theory that he's come up with. You can poke holes in that, but there's no way to disprove that. You know what I mean? Like, it's one of those things, unless somebody has a tape of what was being said in that particular meeting, there is no way to disprove it. And regardless of what Cenk Uygur thinks about it, his thinking about it is not necessarily indicative of the reality of the events. He doesn't know. He's jumping the shark. Aramate poke holes in it. That's all you can do to it. I thought this was great. I thought he did a good job on this. LW, keep up the great reporting, Jamal. Oh, thank you, LW. Elephants on Coke, 2 weeks notice. Woohoo! Love your videos today. Elephants on Coke, ban that kook. Clyde, he's trying to start a race war. Clyde is trying to start a race war? What? God, these points are dumb. At the end of it, he digs at Cenk with that shift comment. Let's hear that part. Let's hear that part. I'm concerned. I don't want them to ding my video for playing it all, which is why I'm skipping for the various parts. But let's hit this part.
Were any of these meetings substantive? Like any of these meetings where the translator,
like, of course, that's the whole point.
And that's the problem with this whole thing. possibly in these meetings then Putin is giving him orders, like he's telling him what to do?
Yes, absolutely. You go like this.
Okay, so I can't prove that wrong because I'm not there, right? So
okay, that's fair. That's fair.
So, like,
of course, that's the whole point.
And that's.
I don't think Cenk gets how hyperbolic that is. Like, he may make a ding at Rachel Maddow, but this is extreme. He's saying that Vladimir Putin is giving instruction, and Armitage asks it bluntly. Are you saying that Vladimir Putin is giving instructions? Yeah, he said it 3 times in this interview. He said it 3 times. Vladimir Putin is giving him instructions. All right, let's keep going.
That's the problem with this whole thing. Like you can't disprove a negative, and so it's like I don't know. But what I can look at Trump's actual policy. His actual policy I see is far more hawkish than Obama's was. And that's why, part of the reason why I find this Russia-Trump conspiracy thing so dangerous is because in a bid to prove it, to substantiate it, we're ignoring what is actually going on. And what's actually going on is very dangerous with nuclear tensions high, with a coup right now being attempted in Venezuela. And where are we on that?
Yeah, but we at the Young Turks are not ignoring any of that. So,
I know you're not.
Right, look, we gotta wrap up. But to me, in only the Russia case, saying I do not want any other Americans in the room, given his what appears to be his long history of money laundering with the Russians, put aside everything else, and the fact that it appears to me that they have that compromising information on him, and then he says I'm going to meet secretly with Putin is disastrous and unprecedented.
Let me say quickly then, if Mueller actually indicts Trump on anything or makes any accusation that the Russians do have something on him or that he engaged in money laundering, I will totally concede your point. But my problem is in the absence of any so far charges around that, not just now with Mueller, but even before Mueller. I mean, Trump was never accused of this before. Now all of a sudden we're concerned about Trump being compromised. In the absence of evidence of it or of an indictment, I'm not going to buy it. I'm just not.
Okay, well, we're gonna have to leave it right there. And what I'm deeply concerned about is that Mueller did not go and investigate the money laundering. If he just comes in with a conclusion about the election, it is going to be, as they have said, anticlimactic. And so somebody look into the money laundering. Well, it's right there.
Adam Schiff says he is, so you're in luck.
Okay, let's hope so. All right, Aaron, thank you for the conversation.
Thanks
I appreciate it. Okay, like what you see?
He said Adam Schiff says he is, so you're fine. I love that, you're fine. He's like, you're all right, you'll be all right. Adam Schiff, he says it. So
click the subscribe button below.
Oh, that's awesome. Good job, Aaron Matei. Good job, good job, good job. Let's see. Yeah, Aaron Matei did a great job on that one. He is the person to talk to on this stuff, and he is willing apparently to talk to pretty much anybody on it. So Jamal, stop donating our Patreon money to TYT. Luca. All right, I'm going to end this. Cenk should interview Alex Jones. They have interviewed. Cenk has interviewed Alex Jones. He has interviewed Alex Jones. Instructions, like how you put IKEA furniture together. No, not how to put IKEA furniture together. Oh man, it is. Man, that's an amazing interview. I can't believe Cenk admitted to that. Like, even if I would have thought that, I don't think I would have admitted that. So good on him for admitting that. That Vladimir Putin is instructing the president of the United States on how to act. And I love Aaron Matei's reaction. Aaron Matei's like, wow. It's like, wow. Just, wow. It's like, how far backwards can you go on that front? Yeah, that was amazing. That was amazing. All right, I'm going to end this one. This one is gone for over an hour. I was going to do this in 2 videos, but it ended up being 1, so I'll go with the 1 video. We've had a lot of people here today. 318 people watching. While we have this many people here, my wife and I, we're going to do a show. We do shows on Sunday, a patron appreciation show. Or I can call it a viewer appreciation show. Or contributor appreciation show. Essentially, people who help out with the content, I try to give them extra content to entice additional help with the content. YouTube has a tendency to be untrustworthy, and as such, I tend not to trust them. And so I tend to lean on patrons a little bit more so. I guess my point is, if you find yourself coming here often, please consider becoming a patron or assisting through PayPal. And if it's through Patreon, I put the additional content afterwards, meaning after the show, that show becomes only available to patrons. And for other people, I have a link where they can go to and essentially see the content. So I want to thank everybody for coming. We've had a tremendous number of people here today, so thank you all. I'll see you guys in a few. I don't know if I'm doing another one tonight. Oh God, it's 10 o'clock. I can't believe it's 10 o'clock. I've been sitting in this room all day. All right, I'm going to end this here. And you all have a decent night. Thanks all. And